On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be taking a look at the BMF title fight as part of UFC 300 between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. And if you've never seen the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different stuff in this video. And then I'm going to give you my prediction of this fight at the end. Some of this stuff may have relevance to you, it may not. Let me know your prediction as soon as you're done watching this. Would love to hear your opinion on this fight. But let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two. The highlight: Justin Gaethje 25-4, Max Holloway 25-7, 35-32. 5'11 apiece, 70-69, physically pretty much the same. Holloway a little bit younger. Let's get into this one. We'll start first with the BMF champ, Justin Gaethje. Like I mentioned there, 25-4 record. By the way, this is a 5-round fight, even though this is part of UFC 300, and even though this is a BMF title, not a actual UFC title. So that's why this is 5 rounds. Got to mention that. And I'm not going to talk about the optics of this fight. I've done enough commentary on that already, but let's just enjoy this fight for what it is, and we'll dig into it here. So you can see there, Justin Gaethje is 35 years old. He's 5'11" with a 70-inch reach, so he'll have a 1-inch reach advantage in this fight. Gaethje, I mentioned the record there, 25-4. He's got 20 knockouts, 1 submission, and 4 decisions. He's the former World Series of Fighting lightweight champion, now known as PFL. He's a former NCAA Division I wrestler. He was the former interim UFC lightweight champion. He's got fight of the night 7 times against Michael Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Edson Barbosa, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, and Rafael Fiziev. He's got performance of the night 5 times. Not going to go through all those names. He's got a lot of accolades. He's also fought at a catchweight of 159 and fought at a catchweight of 165. He never had an amateur debut. Gaethje went right to the pros in 2011. Then he made his UFC debut in July of 2017. Would have been in the UFC a little bit earlier. It's just, again, he was getting paid well in World Series of Fighting. He was making a lot of money, so that's why he came over a little bit later. Gaethje is 8-4 in the UFC. He's got 6 stoppage wins. Some notable wins include Edson Barbosa, Donald Cerrone, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Rafael Fiziev, and Dustin Poirier. Some notable losses include Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Charles Oliveira. Not bad losses at all. He's never really had any major injuries that's taken him out of any fights. He's also never been involved in any close fights because he pretty much finishes all of his opponents. He's had a few layoffs. Let's talk about a few of those. Going from Khabib to Chandler, there was a 378-day layoff. Going from Oliveira to Fiziev, there was a 315-day layoff. And going from Poirier to Holloway, there'll be a 259-day layoff. Since October of 2020, Justin Gaethje has only fought 4 times. So, maybe wanting to be a little bit more active there. Should say 5 times since then. We could go since 2021. He's only fought 4 times. So, there was a point when he did have some gaps in between there. We talked about that, but, fought twice last year. Going to be fighting once this year. We'll see if he gets another one in here after this fight. Let's talk about Gaethje's stats. Justin Gaethje, you can see there, significant strikes landed per minute, 7.35. That's very high. He's 60% on striking accuracy. He does hit his opponents a lot. His striking defense at 53%. So he does get hit a bit, but that's definitely improved over his career. Remember early when he came in the UFC, he was definitely taking some shots. He's got 0.13 takedowns, even though he comes from a wrestling background, doesn't use takedowns that much. And his takedown defense is at 75%, although I doubt we see any takedowns in this fight. Let's get into his opponent here, though. Max Holloway, blessed, who will be moving up a weight class to take on this fight, but blessed is no stranger to 155. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So Holloway, you can see there, 11 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 12 decisions. He's 25-7. He's 31 years old, 5'11" with a 69-inch reach. So he's 3 years younger. That's the only advantage he has on paper against Justin Gaethje. He's a BJJ brown belt. He's got fight of the night 6 times. Don't need to go through all those names, but I'll mention a few. Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, Dustin Poirier, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, and the Korean Zombie. He's got performance of the night 4 times. He's the first American to win the UFC featherweight championship. Holloway had his first amateur fight way back in 2006. Check this out. Actually lost that fight against Aaron Lynch. Wonder what he's up to these days. Made his MMA debut in September of 2010. Made his UFC debut. Here's the crazy thing that I think people forget. Max Holloway made his UFC debut after being 4-0. This is like the equivalent of like a contender series, guy getting in the promotion there. So just 4 fights there for Holloway. Has to fight. Hey, by the way, you're fighting Dustin Poirier in your UFC debut. Kind of a tough one there. It's the only time Holloway's been finished in his career. A submission loss there to Dustin Poirier in the first round. Since then, Holloway has not been finished. It's a key point in what we're going to talk about a little bit later here. So what else do we have? Holloway's UFC record is 20-7. He's got 11 stoppage wins. He went 3-3 to start his UFC career. Some notable wins for Holloway include Andre Fili, Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira, Jeremy Stevens, Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, Arnold Allen, and the Korean Zombie. Some notable losses include Dustin Poirier twice, Conor McGregor, Dennis Bermudez, and 3 times against Alex Volkanovski, although one of those was kind of close. And Holloway's fought at 155 5 times in his career. I think people forget that. Just the one time in the UFC. Had a 149-pound catch weight against Clay Collard, which was a short notice fight back in the day. And he's fought 25 times at 145. Actually, that number might be a little bit off, but what are we going to do? He's had a few layoffs in his career, going from Jose Aldo to Brian Ortega. There was a 370-win-day layoff. Going from Yair Rodriguez to Volkanovski, there was a 231-day layoff. Going from Volkanovski to Allen, 287. And then going from Zombie to Gaethje, there's a 231-day layoff. So not crazy layoffs, but there's been a few. He's had a few injuries that have taken him out of fights. You can kind of see it there with all the canceled bouts. Don't need to talk all about that. Wanted to talk quickly about the last time Holloway fought at 155. That was the fight against Dustin Poirier at UFC 236. So I think what some people forget is that was a bit of a short notice. And look at this. Holloway was a big favorite going into that fight. Minus 265, probably because he hadn't lost in a while. But it would be Poirier getting the win. And I went back and looked at that fight. I think you could have realistically scored that fight 4-1 for Dustin Poirier. I think you could give Holloway the fourth round. But overall, it was all Poirier in this fight. Definitely showed his stuff. And I went back and actually looked at when Holloway took that fight. That was back in February. So the fight was in April. So not a huge amount of time to prepare for this fight. Remember, I think initially it was Tony Ferguson, and then he had all those issues with the police. So Holloway steps in and gets the fight instead over Poirier. So I don't put too much stock into that fight. At least Holloway this time has had a bit more time to prepare for this one as far as like bulking up and all that. But yeah, the odds, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that Poirier did decisively win that fight. There were no issues there. As far as Holloway having some close fights, he has gone the distance. The Leonard Garcia fight, again, if you look at MMA decisions, you can kind of figure out how people scored this one. All the way back to the Leonard Garcia fight, a win there. A lot of people felt like Garcia won that. 7 media members scoring it for Garcia, just 2 for Holloway. The Dennis Bermudez fight, the opposite. 11 people scoring it for Holloway, 0 media members scoring it for Bermudez. A bit of a robbery there. And then there was a second Volk fight, which, again, very close. That was the split at UFC 251. 9 media members scored the fight for Volkanovski, 18 scoring it for Holloway. So that fight could have gone the other way as well. Just pointing that out as far as the optics. Let's look at Holloway's stats here. If you look for Max, again, like Gaethje, a lot of strikes landed per minute, 7.17. His striking accuracy is at 47%. His striking defense is at 59%. So his striking defense isn't too bad. His takedown average is 0.27. Doubt we'll see one there. And his takedown defense is at 84. Don't think Gaethje will be shooting for any takedowns. Okay, let's look at the odds for this fight. Let's bring it up here right now. So you can see there, whoops, as I spell Holloway wrong, Max Holloway is about a 2-1 underdog against Gaethje. Gaethje almost minus 300 around here, which I get. I totally understand it. Because again, Gaethje's been the mainstay. He arguably deserves a title shot right now after knocking out Dustin Poirier in his last fight. And again, it's going to be tough task for Holloway to move up a weight class and get a win here. Tapology tells a similar story here. 73% of fans picking Gaethje, 27% picking Holloway. So, drum roll, please. Oh, I don't have a drum roll. I should probably get one. That would be good. But as far as my pick in this fight, I'm going to keep it pretty simple here, and I'm going to go Justin Gaethje by decision. Now, I can already see people saying this right now. James, Justin Gaethje, if you look at his record here, the majority of his wins are by knockout. 76% of his wins are by knockout. Why would you not say knockout with it being a 5-round fight? I don't know what it is with Hawaiian fighters. A lot of them have really good chins. Holloway seems to be one of them. Holloway has never been finished by knockout in his career. You look at it there, 14% of his losses by submission. It was just the one submission loss to Poirier in his 4th fight, like I mentioned there, and then 86% are by decision. I think Holloway's going to be tough to finish even over 5 rounds. It's not like Holloway has looked bad. It's not like he's regressing. And Holloway's the younger fighter here. He's at 32 years old. Like, yes, he's lost a couple key fights there to Volkanovski, but he's also not looking bad in his fights. Like, I see a lot of people going into this fight talking about Gaethje, oh, this isn't going to be close. Gaethje 1st round knockout. I don't know, man. Max Holloway's pretty durable. Dustin Poirier, you could at least say, has been knocked out a handful of times, or a couple times, I should say, prior to him fighting Gaethje. Holloway hasn't. And I think Holloway has not taken a ton of damage throughout his career. In fact, it's been the opposite. Like, remember that fight with Calvin Kattar? Max Holloway, I have the stat here, landed something crazy like 744 strikes against Calvin Kattar. It's pretty incredible. So we're talking about one of the best boxers in the UFC. This is basically technique versus volume. Gaethje's got technique versus power. Gaethje's got more power in this fight. But Holloway, I think, is the better technical striker. I don't think Holloway's going to look bad in the striking department. Yes, Dustin Poirier was able to beat him in the striking. And yes, Gaethje's looked great as of late, but I just don't think Gaethje's going to catch him and knock him out. I think if it does, it'll be later. But I'm going to go with the fact that I think Gaethje's just he's going to land the better shots and end up winning a decision here. Some other reasons why I like here as well, Gaethje by decision as well, is that if you look at some of his last couple of opponents, Fiziev didn't knock out, and Chandler didn't knock out. Now, the Chandler fight was only 3 rounds. Fiziev was 5. But again, if this is a guy that I know is the percentage of wins favors a knockout here, you look at when he gets that step up, sometimes you can make the argument that, he's not finishing fights. His last actual win outside of Poirier, that was by finish. I mean, look at some of these finishes here. Ferguson, Cerrone, these are older fighters here. James Vick, always been knocked out. Barbosa's been knocked out. Cerrone, like I said, a bit older. So I tend to think Holloway's going to be tougher to finish. And we saw, we've seen certain fighters that have those iron chins as well. I also think that, again, I bring up the fact that Holloway took that Poirier fight on short notice. I think he'll be a bit stronger in this fight. But if you look at the height and reach, they're pretty much the same. Like, it's not like Holloway's going to have a hard time hitting on Gaethje, I don't think. Right? They're both 5'11", and Gaethje's got a 1-inch reach advantage. I don't think that's too much as well. So, yeah. And again, the key thing here for me is Holloway's 32. Like, he's not showing any signs of slowing down or it's not like a case of Holloway losing like a couple fights in a row or, getting knocked out in his last fight and he's moving up to fight Gaethje. Like, I think he can go all 5 rounds. And plus, we know he can go 5 rounds. He's got the cardio to do it. So, again, I'm going to go Justin Gaethje decision. You don't have to be the I told you so if Gaethje ends up knocking him out here. I just don't see this happening, though, because I think Max is going to be durable enough. I think Gaethje will win this fight decisively. I don't think he'll win every single round. I think Holloway might steal a round or two, but I think that Gaethje will ultimately win this fight, and there'll be no controversy there. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking in this fight? I would assume most are picking Gaethje, but how do you think Gaethje's going to win? Are you going knockout? Are you going decision? And by the way, if there's anyone out there picking Max Holloway, I want to hear from you. I want to give you your credit, because maybe if he pulls this off, you deserve that credit, because I don't see many people picking Holloway. In fact, the narrative going into this has been a lot of Holloway's going to get destroyed. I don't think he gets destroyed, but I don't think he wins this fight, if that makes sense. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. If there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up, I'm trying to get to most of them. 300's got a lot of good fights. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, but I've previewed some of them so far, so just let me know what you think in the comments. My name is James Lynch. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.